AM 650 KGAB, I believe on the phone line we have Republican Legislative Candidate John Harvey. Is that you, John?
Yes, sir. How you doing, Doug?
Good. How are you doing this morning?
Not bad at all. Appreciate you letting me come on your show.
Well, thanks for calling in. You're running as a Republican for House District 43, I believe. Do I have that right?
Yes, sir. That's perfect.
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I was born and raised in Wyoming. Graduated high school in Lusk. Went to UW, and then I, about a year before September 11th, joined the Army. Spent about 15 years-ish traveling the world as a kind of soldier and military contractor, and then had the chance to move back to Wyoming. I never really wanted to leave. Always wanted to get back here, and my wife and I chose Cheyenne to settle. I really enjoy it here. I'm kind of a newcomer to Cheyenne, Laramie County. We got here about 2014. And shoot, I just want to try to give back to the state I love so much. So.
Now, I did a little background research, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but when you were in the military, you weren't just a regular soldier, you were in the 10th Mountain Division. Do I have that right?
Yes, sir. That's where I started. Started out as an infantryman in the 10th Mountain Division up in upstate New York. And
that's in Fort Drum, I believe. And that's a pretty elite unit. That's not just run of the mill being a soldier. Am I right?
Well, it's a standard light infantry unit. At the time, we were the most deployed unit in the Army by far. Anytime the Army needed to send anybody anywhere, it seemed like they sent the 10th Mountain. Haiti, Bosnia. Of course, right about that time, the War on Terror got kicked off, and everybody else got deployed too. But yeah, 10th Mountain is we like to think we're a little bit harder than guys from the 82nd or something.
Now, what are you doing back in Cheyenne these days? What are you doing for a living?
I'm a manufacturer. I work for Magpul. I support the Second Amendment so strongly. I like to make 30-round magazines.
So, is the Second Amendment one of your big issues in your legislative run?
That's a huge issue. I think it's one of the most important of all the. Well, I guess it's hard to say any one of the 10 amendments in the Bill of Rights is more important than the others. But if there was one, I'd say it'd be the Second Amendment for sure.
And if you were elected, what would you like to do in terms of the Second Amendment? Do you have anything particular in mind?
Yeah, mostly defense. Wyoming's got some really great gun laws. There are some folks trying to undermine them already, though. Wyoming recently passed a very good stand your ground law. Mm-hmm. There was a man in central Wyoming that had to use that law to defend himself, and there's some folks that want to kind of water that down. I'd like to prevent that. I think we need to get rid of gun-free zones, and I'd like to expand the right for people to carry. So Wyoming's doing pretty good, but I think we could do better.
Now, the gun-free zones, as I'm sure you know, has been an issue in the legislature the last few years. Several bills have been put forward, none of them probably quite attaining what you'd like to do. I know there's been a big dispute about the gun-free zone at the University of Wyoming in particular. That's been in court. This is a pretty strong Second Amendment state. Why do you think the gun-free zones has never quite been overturned, or have never been overturned?
Well, I think there's some powerful interests that are just don't like it. I think the average Wyoming voter supports getting rid of gun-free zones, but there are some people at the top that really don't want that to happen. But hopefully this year we get some more legislators in there that support the Second Amendment, and we can change that.
Now, the gun-free zones also apply at municipal buildings, city halls. You'd like to see that changed, right?
Yes, sir.
How would you respond to the argument, and I've heard this argument made, that, well, people don't really need to be carrying guns to a city council meeting?
Well, there's we've seen attacks. I mean, I know arguments get heated in the city council and all that, but here in Wyoming, people are a little more sensible than everywhere else. I don't expect any shootouts in city council meetings.
Now I've heard
the benefits.
I've heard the
benefits far outweigh the potential problems.
I've heard the argument from some folks in Wyoming. They feel safer in a concealed carry zone. Would you agree with that? I
do. I every now and then, especially here in Wyoming, I'll notice somebody that's got a gun, concealed or open carry, and yeah, it makes me feel better. I feel like if something crazy goes down, I can rely on that person to try to help the craziness.
Okay, I'm speaking with House District 43 Republican Legislative Candidate John Harvey. John, this state faces some tough budget issues over the next few years. We just don't seem to have the money coming in to pay the bills. Governor Gordon, of course, has cut the budget. More cuts are on the way. What would you like to be seeing, or what would you like to see done in the legislature to deal with the situation, assuming that this is something that's going to be a problem for a while?
That's far and away the biggest problem the state faces. What I would like to see is kind of go back, kind of take a step back, and have the legislature look at what are the core functions of government, and let's fund those first. I know that the cuts are pretty. We've got a huge budget shortfall. I believe we got a lot of fat that we could easily trim. Wyoming spending has grown by almost $1 billion in the past 10 years. I don't think it would be too tough to cut approximately $1 billion from the budget. We can get rid of simple things like I think the state of Wyoming has 2 airplanes. Some surrounding states don't have any. That'd be an easy cut. That wouldn't be a whole lot of money saved, but every little bit helps. We go on from there. We could look at administration. Wyoming has approximately 4 workers for every supervisor. The standard is more like 8, and good, official good government standards are more like 12 workers for every supervisor. So I don't want to let go of any Wyoming workers, but if we could kind of rearrange the structure of workers to supervisors, I think that would help with the budget issues. But just, I apologize, I'm a little all over the place on you.
No, you're doing fine.
Going back to the main point, have the legislature look at the core functions of government. What are the basic things government has to do?
Right.
Law enforcement, law and order, we need that. Let's fund that. Roads, we have to have that. Let's fund that. And then once you have those core functions funded, then look at everything else and be like, hey, these are nice to haves, but don't necessarily need them. Like Wyoming Business Council. Sorry,
I was just going to ask about that.
Cut it.
Would you cut that completely? There was a bill in the legislature last session to get rid of it. That didn't go through. Would you get rid of it completely or just scale it back?
I would. If I could, I'd just drop it. I just don't believe we have the money for stuff like that right now.
Now, of course, the elephant in the room is education funding. Very contentious. We have a lot of money going there. What's your stand on that?
I think the education budget must be cut. That's by far the biggest section of the budget. I would like to see those cuts fall more on administrators and try to keep the cuts off students and teachers. Because that's really what education is all about. I definitely don't want to cut education too much, but I think there's some fat that could be trimmed there to help us out on the overall budget.
Okay, I'm speaking with Republican House District 43 candidate John Harvey, running, I believe, against Dan Zwanitzer. Do I have that right in the primary?
Yes, sir.
And Dan Zwanitzer, a longtime incumbent, pretty powerful legislator. He's been there for a while. How do you differ from Dan Zwanitzer? Why should people vote for you instead of him in the primary?
Well, back to the budget issues we were talking about. Dan Zwanitzer is on record favoring, several different tax increases and new taxes. So if you want new taxes, I'm not your guy. I've already promised not to vote no on any increase or new taxes. So if you don't like taxes, I'm your guy. That's one big difference. Another big difference is Second Amendment, which we already discussed. My opponent hasn't been very supportive of different bills coming through that support the Second Amendment, and I would 100% support those. I'm 100% pro-life, so my opponent, he has supported some pro-life bills, but some he hasn't, and I would be a consistent, supporter of pro-life legislation. So those are probably the three main differences between us.
Now, the governor, as part of his, and we're back to the budget here, the governor, as part of his effort to save money, did close 10 rest areas this summer. Is that a move you agree with?
I think that's a case of kill the puppy. You know, whenever government is in trouble budget-wise, their basic instinct is to raise taxes and confiscate more money from the people. Of course, they know that's very unpopular, and the people aren't just going to go along with that. So what do? Instead of cutting some fat from the budget that they know nobody will miss, they'll cut something that's going to make the most people angry. You know, like it's always cops and firefighters. Oh, we're going to cut the budget to cops and well, everybody loves cops and firefighters, so everybody gets up in arms, and then the government says, well, you gotta raise these taxes if you want to pay for this stuff. So I kind of think that's the game they're playing with the rest areas.
So you think that was done intentionally to draw people's attention to the cuts and stir up some opposition to cutting the budget? Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yes, sir.
Now, in terms of, you mentioned the Wyoming Business Council. Of course, they also approve projects that go to the SLIB board for state funding. If the Business Council is no longer here, would you get rid of those state grants entirely that are done through the SLIB board, or would you reroute those somehow?
I would favor getting rid of them. I think with the budget shortfall we're in, I think things like, you know, law enforcement, roads, education is just more important than if we create a good, you know, regulation and tax environment here in Wyoming. Some businesses are going to come here and our economy is going to grow. Whereas if I'll try to incentivize businesses to come here with short-term payouts, but yet they're looking at long-term tax increases, I don't think that's a long-term winner for us.
Okay, I'm speaking with Republican House District 43 candidate John Harvey. By the way, if you have any questions or comments, we do have a phone line open at 632-3323. John, COVID-19, we don't know how long this is going to be an issue. Maybe we'll have a vaccine. If you're elected before you assume office in January, maybe we won't. How do you think it's been handled so far, first of all? Do you agree with the way it's been handled or not?
I don't agree at all with the way it's been handled. I think it's been a disaster. When you look back to March, what they were telling us at first was, hey, you know, we don't want the hospitals to be overwhelmed. Let's flatten the curve, stay home for 2 weeks. You know, self-isolate. That made sense at the time. You know, hey, we don't want the hospitals to be overrun. So, and 2 weeks ain't that long. You know, just stay home. But that 2 weeks is, what are we going on, about 6 months now? And I know we're not locked down like we were back then, but there are people pushing for a completely new lockdown. I think it could have been handled so much better. It's a serious disease, and sadly, people are dying from it. But it's not the Black Death. And frankly, even if it was the Black Death, I wouldn't approve some of the heavy-handed tactics the government's been taking. It hasn't been too bad here in Wyoming, but you look in Colorado where they had a father arrested for playing Frisbee with his daughters in the park, and over in Idaho, a woman arrested for letting her children play on a playground. I mean, man, that sounds like a lot of government overreach to me. So I'd like to see everybody just kind of take a breath, back off. The great thing about COVID is it's shown us exactly who it hurts the most, and that's, you know, basically nursing home residents. So why don't we take some extra steps to protect our nursing home residents and let everybody else, you know, keep the economy moving to get through this as quickly and painlessly as possible.
John, looks like we have a caller on the phone. Good morning, caller. You're on the air with legislative candidate John Harvey. Did you have a question or comment?
Yeah, I did. Thanks for taking the call. Yes, the Second Amendment, of course, is quintessential and it separates us really from the rest of the world. And we get put in a position where we have to protect the rest of the world quite frequently, and it's our ability to field people that have grown up with it, understand it. So I had two comments. One, with regard to education, it's really about the quality of the curriculum that we need to focus on. And I had a friend of mine that was in Special Forces, and I asked him one time, so who's the toughest? You know, I mean, is it the Spasnitz, Russians? Is it the, SAS? Is it who? And he, without hesitation, he said the teachers union. Just like that. And so, to your comment about, spending money on education and whatnot, they are the largest contributors to liberal causes, tenfold to other organizations. So let's just pay attention to curriculum, teach the Constitution. My only other comment was, I think it's a small thing, but I think it's wrong to shut those rest areas down, because people need to have a place to pull over and whatnot, and it's just not right, late at night and whatnot. I think they're a good thing. So thank you for letting me talk. Appreciate it.
Thanks for the call. John, any comment on any of that?
No, I appreciate his comments, and I don't have any major disagreements with him at all.
Now, going back to some issues that came up in the last legislature, there was a proposal. It didn't make it through, but it's something that's come up before and may come up again, to make Interstate 80 a toll road, with the money from that being used to fund improvements and maintenance on Interstate 80. So the bills that have come forward, as I understand it, would not be going into the general fund. They would be specifically earmarked for I-80 maintenance. How do you feel about that?
Well, in general, I don't like it. If they want to make I-80 and pretty much everything else a toll road, I'd be okay with that if they completely eliminated the gas tax. They just raised our gas taxes significantly a few years ago. Where's all that money going? I know Wyoming winters are tough and road maintenance is expensive, but yeah, it's something I need to look at more. But in general, I wouldn't favor a toll on I-80.
John, one of the big issues, and I'm sure you're aware of this one, in the legislature the past couple of years has been a corporate income tax. A lot of the leadership, at least a couple of years ago, as I understood it, was in favor of it, and it did get through, if I'm remembering correctly, the House and died in the Senate. I may have that backwards. But it's something that is being put forward, separate from a personal income tax. The last bill, if I'm recalling correctly, and I'm going from memory, so I hope I have all my specifics in order here, but would have specifically targeted companies with over 100 shareholders. They said they're going after the Walmarts. They called it the corporate recapture tax. The argument here is they're trying to recapture money that Wyoming is paying in anyway. I know you're not a big tax guy. Just curious on your reaction to that.
Yeah, I think that's a Trojan horse. The state government's wanted since 1999. This corporate income tax, it would start out as a corporate income tax. So, and that's how they'd sell it. To say, let's get them great big out-of-state companies that aren't based here in Wyoming, and we'll loot them a little bit. But I'd give it 2, 4, 6 years before they just, the infrastructure's already in place, and they'd expand that corporate income tax to a personal income tax, because of course we'll run out of money again at some point, and then they'll be coming for everybody's incomes.
John, looks like we have another caller. Good morning, caller. You're on the air.
Good morning. Mr. Harvey, how do you feel about Medicaid expansion? And I'll hang up and listen.
John, Medicaid expansion. Go ahead.
I disagree with Medicaid expansion. I don't think it's the right move for Wyoming. We might benefit a little bit in the short term with the extra federal dollars, but as we've seen, the federal government is not something you should be relying on. And once they pull the rug out from under us on that, then we'd be left with an even worse structural budget problem. So no, I'm opposed to Medicaid expansion. In brief.
Speaking with John Harvey, House District 43 candidate, Republican, running against Dan Zwanitzer in the Republican primary. And John, we're getting down close to the end here. We're down to about 3 minutes. Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you would like to discuss, or you'd like to put out there as one of your big issues?
No, I just appreciate everybody's consideration to allow me to represent the citizens of House District 43 in the Wyoming Legislature. I believe Wyoming is the best place on earth. We've got a lot of chaos going on in the world and in the United States. I think Wyoming has the opportunity to be an oasis of calm and peace in the midst of that chaos. But we've got some hard decisions to make, and we need to make the right ones, or we might fall into the chaos also.
Couple other issues, since we have a couple minutes left, that have come up in recent years. Legalizing marijuana, medicinal and or recreational. How do you feel about it?
I'm somewhat ambiguous on it. Personally, I don't believe marijuana is good for you. I wish nobody would smoke it. However, I also don't believe that the proper treatment for drug addiction is imprisonment. If a good decriminalization or medical marijuana type bill arrived on the House floor, I would definitely support it.
Now, there's also been talk in recent years of a statewide non-discrimination ordinance. How do you come down on that?
I'd vote no on that. I just don't think it's a important issue. You know, if you're a good employee, your boss is going to want to keep you, regardless of your, personal situation. If you're a bad employee, your boss is going to want to fire you, regardless of your personal.
Well, and I think the recent Supreme Court ruling, and I'm not an attorney, Lord knows, but I think the recent Supreme Court ruling did protect LGBTQ people in terms of employment discrimination, if I understood that ruling correctly. Now,
Yes, sir, I do believe that's right.
Advocates of such legislation would say, well, they're still not protected in terms of housing and some other issues. But you would vote no on that.
I would. I think there's adequate protections in place. I think if someone was kicked out of their apartment, just for being gay, I think there would be such a public uproar on something like that that would take care of itself pretty fast.
John, we're almost out of time. We've got 40 seconds left. Any quick last thoughts for our listeners this morning?
Oh, just great to be on your show, Doug. Thanks for having me here. And to all your listeners out there, please consider John Harvey for House District 43.
Thanks, John. I appreciate your time this morning.